The Billionaire's Teacher. Chapter 1. The Girl by the Playground Fence. When your child's smile suddenly hides something, you start seeing shadows in the daylight. Marcus Johnson noticed it first with his daughter, Layla. She used to come home from school quiet, her head down, books unopened. But lately, she'd been different. Smiling to herself like she knew some secret the world couldn't touch. And Marcus, being a single dad with more money than free time, wanted to know why. That's how he ended up parked across from Roosevelt Middle School on a warm Tuesday afternoon, watching Layla from behind his tinted windows. She wasn't with the other kids. She was out by the old playground fence, sitting cross-legged on the grass, a tattered notebook in her lap. And across from her sat another girl, skinny, barefoot, hair in messy twists like she'd cut it herself. Marcus leaned forward. He could see Layla reading out loud from the notebook, stumbling over words. The other girl leaned in, tapping the page, correcting her gently, making her try again. Layla laughed when she got it right, and the girl clapped for her like it was the biggest thing in the world. Marcus wasn't used to feeling surprised, but this scene threw him. Layla's school cost more than some people's houses, and yet here she was getting schooled by a kid who looked like she hadn't owned a pair of new shoes in years. He stayed there longer than he meant to, watching. The barefoot girl's name, he learned from the way Layla said it, was Tiana. She had that calm confidence you only see in people who've been through storms and decided they weren't going to drown. She spoke slow, clear, with a little smile that said, "I know you can get this." When the bell rang, kids poured out of the building like someone had pulled a fire alarm. Layla waved at Tiana, hugged her quick, then ran toward the car line. Tiana stayed behind, gathering scraps of paper into a plastic grocery bag, her head down like she didn't want to be noticed. Marcus could have driven away. He almost did. But something about that girl, about the way she taught his daughter without looking for credit or praise, stuck in his mind. That night, while Layla was doing homework at the kitchen table, Marcus asked casually, "So who's your new friend?" Layla froze for a second. "Just someone I know." "From school?" "Not exactly." She wouldn't meet his eyes. Marcus didn't push, but in his gut he felt it, that mix of curiosity and caution. He'd made millions in real estate, learned how to read people before they even opened their mouths. And right now, his instincts told him there was a story behind that barefoot girl by the fence, and it was one he needed to hear. What he didn't know was that meeting her would change not just his daughter's life, but his own, and that sometimes the truth hiding in plain sight can knock the wind out of even the strongest man. Chapter 2. Tiana's World. Tiana Jones had learned early that life in Jackson, Mississippi didn't hand out favors to girls like her. She was 12 but carried herself like someone twice her age. Losing her mama to cancer 2 years back had flipped her whole world upside down. After that, it was just her and Grandma Ruth, who loved her in her own way but loved scratch-off tickets a little more. Rent was always late, the fridge was always light, and school was never a priority. Her last real day in a classroom was over a year ago. She remembered it because the teacher had given her a gold star for reading out loud without stumbling. Tiana had carried that star in her pocket for weeks until it faded and tore. She told herself she'd earn another one someday, but someday never came. Now her classroom was the streets. She picked up old worksheets from trash bins behind Roosevelt Middle, borrowing pencils when she could, writing on the backs of flyers. She'd lean up against the brick wall outside the school, ear pressed close enough to catch the teacher's voice through an open window, memorizing math problems and spelling lists she wasn't even assigned. Tiana didn't beg, she hustled, selling bottled water at red lights, handing out flyers for the barber shop, even helping Miss Thelma carry groceries up 3 flights for a couple dollars. She wasn't proud, but she wasn't ashamed either. Pride didn't feed you. Hustle did. But her favorite hustle was teaching Kendra, a little girl from the shelter who struggled with reading. They'd sit by the playground fence far enough not to get shooed away, and Tiana would break down words slowly, making it a game. She'd say, "You get this one right, I'll give you my last peppermint." Kendra would grin, and 9 times out of 10 she'd win that candy. That was the day Marcus Johnson had seen them. Tiana didn't notice him, but she felt the eyes of passing cars the same way she always did. Most folks staring, a few frowning, a couple smiling like they understood. She was used to it. What she wasn't used to was getting home and finding Grandma Ruth pacing on the porch. "Girl, where you been?" Ruth's voice had that edge that meant trouble. "Teaching," Tiana said simply, setting her plastic bag down. "Teaching who? You can't even get back in school yourself," Ruth snapped, though her eyes softened a little. "Now get inside before dark and lock that door." Tiana went in, but her mind stayed outside, back by that fence. She didn't know why it mattered so much, but helping Kendra read felt better than any dollar she'd made. It was like for a few minutes she wasn't just some barefoot girl in an old hoodie. She was somebody. That night, as the streetlights buzzed and sirens echoed somewhere in the distance, Tiana lay on the couch staring at the ceiling. She thought about her mama, about the gold star, about the way Kendra's face lit up when she got a word right. She didn't know it yet, but someone had been watching her. Someone with the kind of power to flip her whole story. And in a city where people could walk past you your whole life without seeing you, that was the kind of thing that could change everything. Chapter 3. Trouble on the Corner. 2 days later, Tiana was working her usual spot outside the Texaco on West Capitol Street. The sun was already cooking the pavement, making the air waver like a mirage. She balanced a case of bottled water on an old milk crate, calling out to folks pumping gas, "Cold water, $1, beat the heat before it beats you." Business was slow. Most people waved her off or acted like they didn't hear her. By noon, she'd made just enough to buy bread and maybe a can of tuna. She was already picturing dinner when a group of older boys rolled up on bikes, circling her like vultures. "What you got in that jar, Tiana?" One of them smirked, eyeing her plastic container of cash. "Enough for me, not for you," she said, trying to sound bold. Wrong move. The tallest one snatched the jar clean out of her hand and started pedaling away. Without thinking, Tiana took off after him, her flip-flops slapping the hot concrete. "Give it back, Jamal!" she yelled, but he only laughed. She ran until her legs burned, but the boys disappeared down a side street. Breathing hard, she stopped on the corner, fists clenched. The world kept moving, cars honking, people chatting, music thumping from a passing SUV, but nobody looked her way. Not one person. She sat on the curb, pulling her knees to her chest, trying not to cry. Crying in public was like bleeding in front of sharks. That's when a shadow fell across her. "You all right, lil one?" The voice was deep, steady. She looked up. It was the same man from the Escalade, the one who'd been watching by the school fence. He was in a silver pickup now, wearing a crisp button-down and shades. "I'm fine," she muttered, wiping her face quick. "Don't look fine to me," he said, crouching so they were eye level. He reached into his wallet and pulled out some bills. "Here, I think you're short about, what, $6? Tiana froze. "How you know that?" He smiled. "Call it a good guess. And take this too, consider it payment for that reading lesson I saw you give the other day. Best teaching I've seen in a long while." She stared at the $20 bill like it was a trap. "I don't take charity." "Ain't charity," he said, slipping it into her hand before she could argue. "It's payment for services rendered. Now you hungry? There's a diner 2 blocks down. Best fried catfish in Jackson." Her stomach growled loud enough for him to hear. She looked away, embarrassed, but he chuckled. "Come on, I'll buy lunch. You can pay me back when you're president." She wanted to say no. She didn't know this man, but something in his tone wasn't pity, it was respect. And respect was a currency she didn't get often. By the time they reached the diner, she'd learned his name, Marcus Johnson. She didn't know yet that name carried weight in the city. All she knew was he bought her a plate big enough to feed her twice and didn't ask for anything in return. As they left, Marcus looked down at her and said, "You keep teaching like that, Tiana, and you're gonna change somebody's life. Maybe your own." She didn't answer, but inside something shifted. Maybe for the first time she thought it might be true. Itil, Chapter 4. Under the Maple Tree. Marcus showed up at the schoolyard again 2 days later, this time with a backpack in his hand. Tiana spotted him before he saw her and nearly walked the other way, but curiosity kept her feet planted. He handed her the bag like it was no big deal. "What's this?" she asked, eyeing it like it might bite. "Supplies," Marcus said. "If you're gonna be teaching folks, might as well have the right tools. Open it." Inside were spiral notebooks, sharpened pencils, a few reading workbooks, and even a slightly scuffed tablet. To Tiana, it looked like treasure. She tried to hand it back. "I can't take this." "You can and you will," he said with a half smile. "Besides, Layla's been talking about you nonstop. Girl says you got her reading better than her actual teacher." Tiana raised an eyebrow. "She exaggerates." Marcus shook his head. "Nah, I've been watching. You got something special." They ended up walking to the park a few blocks away, settling under the wide shade of a big maple tree. Layla was already there, sitting cross-legged with a stack of books. She lit up when she saw Tiana. "You came." "Yeah," Tiana said, sitting down across from her. "We starting with reading or math?" "Reading," Layla said quickly. "Math makes my brain hurt." Tiana grinned. "We'll fix that later." The afternoon slid by in an easy rhythm. Tiana guiding, Layla following, Marcus watching from a nearby bench. Layla laughed more in that 1 hour than Marcus had heard all month. She stumbled through a tricky sentence, and Tiana coached her gently. "Don't read it like a robot. Read it like you're telling your best friend." Layla tried again, and this time it sounded like a story instead of homework. When Layla finally nailed the page, Tiana clapped for her like she'd just won an award. Layla's eyes shined. No one ever claps for me when I get stuff right, she said softly. Tiana blinked, caught off guard. Well, I do, and I will every time you nail it. From his bench, Marcus noticed something. The way Layla leaned in toward Tiana, trusting her in a way she didn't trust her teachers, even him. And the way Tiana's posture changed when she was teaching. Like she forgot for a moment she was a girl without a home. But the peace didn't last. A woman passing with her kids slowed down to stare. She whispered something just loud enough for them to hear. "What's a Johnson doing with some street kid?" Tiana stiffened, her hands moving to gather her things. Marcus stood before she could. "Don't mind her," he said, voice low but steady. "Some folks got full pockets but empty hearts." Tiana didn't say anything, but the corners of her mouth twitched just a little. As the sun dipped low, Layla begged, "You'll come back tomorrow, right?" Tiana hesitated, glancing at Marcus. He nodded once. Same time, same place. And for the first time in a long time, Tiana walked away feeling like she had somewhere she was expected to be, somewhere she mattered. Chapter 5. The day everything changed. It was a Friday morning, clear skies over Jackson, the kind that made you forget the city could ever be cruel. Roosevelt Middle was buzzing with noise because the mayor was coming for a ribbon cutting on the new library. Cameras, reporters, the whole show. Marcus stood off to the side in a dark suit, watching Layla fidget with a folded sheet of paper. "You ready?" he asked. She shrugged. "A little." "Just remember what Tiana taught you," he said. "Breathe, take your time, and look 'em in the eye." When Layla's name was called, she walked up to the mic like she'd been doing this her whole life. She unfolded the paper, took a deep breath, and began reading her speech. No stumbling, no rushing. Every word was clear and steady. The crowd clapped before she even finished. Marcus could have let it end there, but something in him said no. He stepped up to the mic, took it from the stand, and said, "I appreciate all the applause for my daughter, but if you're clapping, you should know who taught her." The crowd went quiet. He scanned the edge of the schoolyard until he spotted Tiana, standing half hidden behind a tree, clutching that old grocery bag like it was armor. Marcus pointed straight at her. "That young lady right there," he said, voice ringing through the speakers, "is the reason Layla's reading like this. She's 12 years old, she's homeless, and she's the smartest teacher I've ever met." Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Tiana froze, caught between pride and the urge to bolt. Marcus kept going. "I'm not saying this to embarrass her. I'm saying it because talent like hers shouldn't be hidden behind fences. Starting today, I'm making sure she's got a roof over her head, a seat in this school, and every book she needs. Not because I pity her, but because I believe in her. And if we can't do that for our kids, what are we even doing?" For a heartbeat, the yard was silent. Then the clapping started, slow at first, then louder, until it filled the air. Layla ran off the stage and grabbed Tiana's hand, pulling her into the open. Cameras flashed. Reporters started asking questions. Later, as the crowd thinned, Marcus handed Tiana a shiny new key. "That's for your place," he said. "It's small, but it's yours. No more sleeping in shelters." She stared at it, her fingers curling tight around the metal. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Because you're worth it," he said simply. That night, Tiana lay on a real bed for the first time in years. The sheets smelled like laundry soap. She kept the key under her pillow just in case it was all a dream. In the weeks that followed, she started school alongside Layla, still meeting under the maple tree after class. Only now their lessons went both ways. Layla taught her chess. Tiana taught her how to cook grits without burning them. And like in the old stories folks tell on porches in the South, the moral was simple. Sometimes the richest thing a person can do is see the kid everyone else walks past and refuse to keep walking. Chapter 6. The Promise Under the Maple Tree. It had been 3 months since that day in the schoolyard, and life for Tiana looked nothing like it used to. She woke up in her own small apartment now, just 1 bedroom, but to her it felt like a palace. No more shelter bunks, no more curling up on the floor of Grandma Ruth's kitchen. She had a desk for her books, a lamp that worked, and a door she could lock. But even with all the changes, she still showed up under the maple tree every afternoon. That spot wasn't just a meeting place anymore, it was their little world. Layla would come running from the school building, and Marcus would sometimes join them, leaning against the tree, pretending not to listen while Tiana taught. One late autumn day, the leaves had turned gold and red, swirling down around them. Layla was reading from a novel, stumbling over a tricky sentence. Tiana corrected her gently. "Slow down, girl. Ain't no prize for finishing first." Layla grinned and started over. Marcus watched, smiling, but his mind was working. He'd seen Tiana's grades from her new school, straight A's. Teachers calling her exceptional and gifted. But he also knew how fast good opportunities could slip away if no one fought for them. When the lesson ended, Marcus cleared his throat. "Tiana, you ever think about college?" She laughed like he'd told a joke. "College? I'm just trying to make it through 8th grade without falling asleep in history class." "I'm serious," he said. "You've got the brains for it, and I'm not letting that go to waste. I'll make you a deal. If you keep your grades up, I'll cover whatever school you want, high school, college, all of it." Tiana froze, her eyes darting between him and Layla. "Why would you do that for me?" Marcus shrugged. "Because somebody once gave me a chance I didn't deserve. I'm just passing it on." For a moment she didn't answer. The wind rustled the branches overhead, dropping a leaf right into her lap. She twirled it between her fingers before saying quietly, "Okay, I'll hold you to that." Weeks passed, and their little circle under the tree became something the whole neighborhood knew about. Other kids started stopping by, some needing help with homework, others just curious. Tiana taught them all, patient and steady. Word spread about the girl who could teach anybody, and it wasn't long before the local paper ran a story about her. One Saturday, Marcus brought coffee and sat with her before the kids arrived. "You know," he said, "one day you're gonna be teaching in a classroom with your name on the door." Tiana shook her head, smiling. "Maybe. But even then, I'll still come back here. This tree's where it started." And she meant it, because the maple tree wasn't just shade. It was proof that even the smallest place could hold the start of something big. The lesson was clear. Wealth isn't measured by what's in your bank account, but by the lives you choose to lift up along the way. And for Tiana, the richest promise she'd ever received was made right there, under the falling leaves.